Dallas burned under a white noon sun, heat rippling off the asphalt, the kind that makes engines sputter and tempers pop. A black SUV leaned crooked on a blown tire, hazard lights clicking like a metronome for panic. Ethan Reyes checked the dashboard clock. 11 minutes to a make-or-break interview across town. 3 lunchboxes, 1 overdue bill, and his mother's meds lived inside that minute hand. He could keep going. He could pretend he never saw her. He braked. "Do you need a hand?" he asked, voice steady, hands not. The woman, immaculate suit, eyes fraying at the edges, nodded, breath short. Somewhere in his pocket, his son's crayon drawing of Dad at his new job warmed against his chest. Fate likes small hinges. This was one. If stories like this speak to you, stick with me and hit subscribe. We're just getting started. The tire hissed like a secret letting itself out. Ethan slid the jack under the frame, the road's heat pressing through his palms. Dallas traffic braided around them, delivery vans, lifted trucks, the glitter of midday hurry, while a cicada chorus drilled the silence between their sentences. "Thank you," the woman said, shouldering the kind of poise that only just holds together. "They said 2 hours for roadside. I have 20 minutes. "Same," Ethan answered with a half-smile. "Different battle." He loosened lug nuts in a clean, practiced rhythm. Steel gave, time did not. "I'm Ethan." "B," she said. "B. Hale." And the last name rang a bell somewhere on the business station he couldn't afford, but sometimes listened to, the way a mechanic listens to a misfire through a hood. The jack creaked. The SUV lifted. Heat wavered. Ethan's shirt clung to his shoulders. Grease found the old scar across his knuckle, a pale hook from a teenage radiator incident. He preferred tools to luck. Tools obeyed if you learned their language. "You're good at this," B said, and it wasn't small talk. She watched his hands like someone who had been failed by hands before. "Used to fix bigger things," he said. "Now I fix what's in front of me." What were the bigger things? Supply lines, warehouses, time? He grunted the last nut loose and pulled the wheel. "The heavy stuff. Why did you stop?" "The company stopped," he said simply. "Sold. Shuttered. We all got neat envelopes and a week to turn in our keycards." He glanced at his watch. 10 minutes to cross town in Texas noon. A losing proposition. He kept working. B's composure cracked just enough for truth to leak out. "I'm supposed to present to the board in..." She checked her phone. 18 minutes. It's my plan, my proof. I belong in the room I keep getting invited to, and then asked to pour coffee in. Ethan met her eyes from the shadow of the wheel well. Something like recognition passed between them. The specific loneliness of people who carry other people's futures. "Then we'll make it enough," he said, and meant it. The spare rolled out of his trunk like a second chance. He seated it, hands quick and sure, shoulders moving in the economy of someone who has learned to ration his strength, between shifts, between bills, between goodbyes that come too soon. He remembered the drawing in his pocket. He remembered Miguel's whisper, "Dad's gonna get it today," as if wishes were wrenches you could just pick up. "Why did you stop?" B asked again, softer now, as if the question were a bandage she was afraid to pull. He tightened the final lug nut and sat back on his heels. "My wife died," he said, not as drama, but geography. 3 kids. My mum's heart isn't what it used to be. I needed a job with hours that let me be. Gravity. B's throat worked. "I'm sorry." "Me too, but grief. It teaches talk. Where to lean, where to let go." He lowered the jack. The SUV settled with a small, decisive sigh. The kind of sound a person makes when they finally understand the next step. "Get in," B said suddenly. "I'm taking you to your interview." He blinked. "You don't..." "I insist." A flicker of command slid into place like a blade in a sheath. "And I owe you more than thank you." The interior smelled like leather and something citrus and expensive. Cold air bit his damp shirt. His phone vibrated. "St. Clara Clinic. Test results ready. He silenced it, filed the dread on the same mental shelf as later, where most single parents keep their fear. Traffic, brash and democratic, refused to part for anyone. B drove like someone who'd memorized the city's arteries, jaw tight, eyes forward. "What position?" she asked without looking. "Logistics manager, Hale Industries." He said it like a dare to the universe. B's eyebrows lifted. "You don't say. You know them?" He tried, dry. She laughed, a quick surprised sound that made him want to make it happen again. "A little." "Then you know your costs are bleeding out of the cross-dock between Irving and the South Warehouse," he said before he could stop himself. "And your competitors beating you by 22 minutes on the Dallas-Austin lane because they killed their siloed reporting." The car glided through a yellow, turning red. B glanced over, interest like a lens snapping into focus. "You're certain?" "Numbers don't lie, people do," he said. "But numbers with context tell the truth faster." Her phone rang, she let it. "You did your homework." "I have mouths to feed," he said, and the line wasn't a joke. They slid into the underground garage, light dropping to a cool industrial dusk. B parked in a reserved spot. "Security VP." She killed the engine and turned to him, and only then did he see it. The fatigue riding beneath the polish, the calculus of being the boss and someone's kid at the same time. "Ethan," she said, "come with me." The elevator hummed. The mirrored walls caught them both at angles, his thrift store tie, her immaculate suit, the outline of two people who might not have met if not for a nail in the road. The doors opened to glass and steel and carpet that swallowed footfalls like secrets. A woman with a tablet intercepted them, breathless. "Miss Hale, your father is—" "I know," B said, and the temperature of her voice dropped 3 degrees. "Tell him I'm here." Only then did Ethan understand the last name. Hale wasn't a coincidence. The boardroom doors were taller than any he'd stood before. Through the glass, he saw men in jackets the color of money and screens full of the kind of graphs he used to dream about fixing. "Ready?" B asked. "No," he said, "but I'm coming." She smiled, not pretty exactly, but surprisingly kind. "That'll do." They stepped into the room, conversations cut like engines turned off. A grey-haired man at the head of the table, authority in a navy suit, looked from his daughter to the stranger beside her, irritation in the set of his mouth. "Finally," he said. "And who is—" "This," B said, clear and level, "is the man who chose someone else's emergency over his own chance. And also the man who can explain why our Dallas-Austin lane is bleeding time." All heads turned. Ethan felt the paper in his pocket like a small heart beating. Outside, somewhere far below, Dallas kept moving. In here, the room waited. He took a breath that tasted like cold air and new trouble. "Good morning," he said. "I'll be fast." And for the first time in a long time, he believed it. The boardroom smelled like cold coffee and old authority. Screens glowed with graphs that pretended to be neutral. Ethan didn't move toward the head of the table. He stopped near the nearest screen, as if it were a garage bay door he'd open with the right touch. "Dallas-Austin Lane," he began, tapping a key. A map appeared, arteries in red and blue. "You're losing 22 minutes to Vanguard because your cross-dock in Irving chokes at shift change. See the spike at 2:10 p.m.? It's not traffic, it's paperwork." Silence, the respectful kind you offer an unexpected expert. A director cleared his throat. "And your evidence?" "Phone GPS from your own drivers," Ethan said. "They idle 8 to 11 minutes waiting for pick tickets that should have been printed upstream. Your WMS and your TMS don't talk. They wave across a fence." Richard Hale's jaw flexed. "And your solution?" Ethan switched slides. Fewer colors, plainer lines. "Kill the fence." On data spine, orders to pick lists to dock schedules to live ETAs. No heroics, just sequence. Cross-dock goes from FIFO to wave sequencing, synced to freeway choke points. We build around Texas, not pretend it's Ohio. B watched him with a stillness that looked like relief in a better suit. "What does this cost?" another director asked. the word cost calibrated like a scalpel. Less than losing another 2 points of market share, Ethan said. Start with a middleware layer. Open loop API. 2 weeks for a pilot. 3 months to rip the fence out. A low murmur. Skepticism, yes, but interest too. He felt the paper in his pocket, Miguel's drawing, like a hand on his shoulder. He pressed on. And there's culture, he added. Right now, your dock managers are paid to optimize their dock, not the day. Change the score. Pay for day velocity. They'll move the world. Richard leaned back, studying him like a weather front. Ms. Hale? Bea didn't look away from Ethan. We try the pilot, she said. Irving, 2 weeks. A director protested. With what team? We're stretched. With him, she answered, then turned to Ethan. If you'll take it. Ethan nodded once, because yes would come out too fast. That was when his phone buzzed. The St. Clara notification he'd shelved. Test results. He let the screen dim under his palm. Later, the doors opened. Anna, breathless, hair escaping its pin. Mr. Hale, about the other candidate for logistics. She told them about falsified references, the Vanguard connection. Heads swiveled. The room's temperature changed. Richard's voice went cool. So we nearly handed our house keys to our neighbor. Ethan heard himself speak before he decided to. They're scared, he said. Fear makes people impatient. Let's make them more afraid. It wasn't a threat, more a diagnosis. Richard looked at his daughter, looked at Ethan again, then nodded once, a weather vane finding true wind. 2 weeks, he said, no excuses. When the meeting broke, Bea walked him to the elevator. In the stainless glare, her reflection had edges and a softness he hadn't seen earlier. You were good in there, she said quietly. I fixed what was in front of me. You will again, she said. The elevator chimed. And if you need to step out for anything. My mom, he said. St. Clara. The words were a little gravel. I'll be fast. Be fast where it matters, she answered. We'll hold the room. By the time he hit the heat of the garage, the adrenaline had thinned. Outside, the sky was a sheet of hard blue, the kind that makes you squint at the future. He drove toward the hospital, the freeway unspooling like a long sentence he'd have to finish carefully. St. Clara smelled like sanitizer and lemon. The cardiology wing hummed with machines that measured how stubborn a heart could be. Teresa sat in a chair, twisting a tissue into threads. She rose when she saw him. She's in there. Doctor says it's her valve. He found his mother smaller under white sheets, brave in the way only mothers learn, by pretending the pain is a draft you can shut. Hey, Ma, don't you hey me, she rasped, and he could have cried with relief at the attitude. You're supposed to be at an interview. I went, he said. It was different. He took her hand, skin like paper the sun had read too many times. They said surgery. She nodded, eyes flicking to the monitor as if it were a gossip she didn't trust. They always say a lot. The cardiologist explained stenosis in words dense enough to lean on. Replace the valve. Good odds, bad bills. Ethan did the math you do when life hands you 2 ledgers, money and time, and both are red. He thought of the boardroom, the pilot, the way possibility had just stretched open. He thought of Miguel's drawing. He thought of the pill bottles lined up like soldiers on the kitchen counter, then heels on tile. Bea, still in her suit, hair not perfect anymore, which made her more so. She shook the doctor's hand, asked crisp questions that cut the problem into pieces a person could carry. Hale Industries has a corporate plan with you, she said. He's our hire. Put his mother under the best coverage, effective immediately. Ethan stared. The doctor's shoulders lowered 2 inches. Teresa's hand flew to her mouth. His mother squinted at Bea, as if measuring her for a story to tell later. You're the tire girl, she decided, and Bea laughed, a little breathless. After signatures and codes and a talk with a woman named Denise, who knew more about hospital billing than God, they had a date. Next Tuesday. The word scheduled felt like a sacrament. When they stepped into the hall, the quiet wrapped them. "I don't know how to—" Ethan began. "Don't," Bea said, a palm lifted. "Help goes both ways." He smiled, tired. "You don't even know if I can deliver those 22 minutes. "I know how you tightened a lug nut," she said. "You don't fake hands like that." His phone buzzed again. This time he checked it. "Anna, Vanguard here with counsel. Claims of IP overlap." He exhaled, a thin thread. "I should go," Bea said. "I'll sit with your mother. Tell her the story about you and the radiator at 17. His eyebrows shot up. "How'd you leave clues?" she said, almost smiling. "Radiator scar. The way you baby your knuckles. Go." Back at Hale, the sun had tilted. The boardroom had not. Carlos from Vanguard sat with 2 lawyers and a face like he'd ordered the weather. The words proprietary and exposure hung in the air like cheap cologne. Ethan sat. He didn't puff. He didn't fold. He talked systems, not secrets. "You can't copyright a sequence," he said. "You can only execute it better." Richard's gaze slid to Bea. She gave a half shrug that meant he's not wrong. After an hour that felt like lifting a car without a jack, Vanguard relented. Not because they believed, but because they were tired of the room that believed harder. When it was over, Richard clapped Ethan's shoulder once. Approval rationed like a bonus. "Pilot stands," he said. "Be back at dawn." Ethan drove back to St. Clara in the blue hour where Texas looks forgiving. Bea was in the chair by his mother's bed, shoes off, reading out a crossword clue to a woman who now had opinions on verbs again. 22 minutes, his mother said without greeting. "It's a nice number." "It'll be smaller," he said, and Bea's eyes warmed like someone finding a heater in a cold garage. They spoke softly about Tuesday, about outcomes, logistics of kids, Teresa's schedule. Bea had already arranged pickups and casseroles and a ride to the follow-up. It took Ethan a full minute to notice the tremor in his own hands had stopped. As the nurses dimmed the lights, he walked Bea to the elevator. The doors slid open like a curtain on something too big to name. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome," she answered. Then, before the doors sealed, "Ethan? Yeah? If we get this right, work, home, all of it. Let's not pretend it was luck. Let's call it what it is." "What? Choice?" He carried the word down the hall like a tool he was learning to use. Dawn smelled like diesel and bakery air. Irving Crossdock woke in lights and forklifts and the particular music of pallets knocking rhythm. Ethan walked the floor with a yellow vest and an old clipboard, because sometimes you earn trust faster if you look analog. "Scoreboard's wrong," he told the shift lead, a woman named Priya, whose eyebrows could move freight. He pointed at the wall. "You're tracking picks per hour. I want day velocity. How many orders left the building by promised time? We pay on that." Priya's mouth tilted. "You changing comp?" "Today, no. This month, yes." He flipped to a simple chart. "This is the freeway. We wave to its traffic. We don't fight it. 5-minute buffers at 1:55 and 2:05. We stage by route, not by aisle. And tickets print upstream at 1:40, no exceptions." "Who dies if printer dies?" she asked, practical as gravity. "We double-path the print, and we stick a dumb roll by Dock 7 with pre-printed labels just to insult the outage." She grinned despite herself. "You've done this." "I've done worse." By noon, the dock had a new heartbeat. The first wave rolled out with stickers where stickers had never been. A driver named Lyle radioed back from Loop 12. "Feels like cheating," he said. "Like the road owes us." At 2:10, the choke point that used to clench didn't. Ethan watched the clock like a hawk, willing a second hand forward. It cooperated. 22 minutes fell to 11. He texted Bea one number. 11. Her reply came back 3 seconds later. "Make it 15. Dinner on me." He grinned at the screen like a teenager and then caught himself. Teresa would laugh. The kids would ask 100 questions. His mother would pretend to disapprove and then ask what Bea had ordered. By week's end, the pilot was a rumor with teeth. The dock crew started betting not money but minutes. Priya drew a thermometer on a whiteboard. Hell yeah at 15. Sainthood at 18. They landed 16 on Friday, and someone smuggled in a grocery store cake and wrote choice in blue icing. Ethan took a picture he didn't post anywhere. On Monday, Vanguard sent a bouquet that wasn't a bouquet. 2 lawyers with briefcases posing as lilies. Accusations were drier this time, like they'd been faxed too many times. Ethan didn't bristle. He demoed an API call. He explained wave logic. He did a thing he hadn't done in years. He enjoyed the argument because it was true. That night, back at St. Clara, he read Charlotte's Web to Miguel in a chair that wasn't built for reading. Bear arrived with Swiss chocolates his mother pretended not to like. "I prefer Snickers," she told B severely, then winked at Ethan when B went for water. When discharge papers came, the house filled with the smell of arroz con pollo and lemon cleaner and children's shampoo. His mother sat in the good chair like a queen who'd survived a coup. B came by with a stack of forms and a softness that didn't read as pity. "You're allowed to lean," she told him on the porch, the Dallas dusk tinting everything the color of second chances. "I don't want to make you the lever," he said. "Then make me the fulcrum," she answered, a half-smile. "Less glamorous, more useful." He laughed, the sound surprised out of him. Down the street, someone's sprinkler ticked. A plane stitched a white seam across the sky. He realized he wasn't waiting for the next bad thing like a dog trained to flinch. Numbers turned into weapons. Weapons turned into offers. Vanguard arrived with a partnership proposal that smelled like perfume over gasoline. "Shared operations," Carlos said, bright. "Economies of scale." Ethan skimmed the packet. He saw the trap, the asymmetrical data rights, the governance clause that would put Hale's roadmaps in Vanguard's drawer. He didn't thump the table. He asked questions like a man measuring a beam before he cut. Be polite, be precise, be patient, be ready. "I'm not opposed to partners," Richard said afterward, alone with B and Ethan. "I'm opposed to being furniture." "Then don't sit," Ethan said. "Stand, ship, let them chase your dust." They did. The next 2 weeks were heat and motion. Priya's board hit 18, and someone rang a bell they didn't have. Drivers started telling each other jokes on the radio. A warehouse can be a hard place. Now it felt a little less so. Personal life refused to wait politely. Ethan's kids asked if B could come to Miguel's almost three-pointer in the driveway. She did. She cheered like the ball had obeyed physics. Later, in the kitchen, washing a pan like she'd earned the right, she asked, "Tell me about her," meaning Ethan's wife without saying wife. He told a little. The good parts, the funny parts, the fight about whether cilantro tasted like soap, the quiet morphine talk near the end where love turns into instruction. B listened like listening was a skill you could master. At night, he drafted a training plan. In the morning, he cooked eggs with too much pepper. He dropped kids at school with promises he meant to keep. He doled out minutes like a stingy god, and still found some to sit by his mother's chair, watch her knit, hear the click of needles like rain on an old roof. Rumor tightened. B might be president by next year. Ethan noticed the way the hallway changed when she passed, how men who were loud with each other lowered their volume an inch out of respect or fear. He wondered if his feelings were a luxury or a liability. He wondered if you could love someone in public without making their job harder. B handled it by handling it. "We name it," she said on a walk through Clyde Warren Park, where kids ran through fountains and a vendor sold elotes that stained fingers and made rules feel silly. "We design around it. The company shouldn't have to carry our happiness, but it could benefit from it." "How?" "People do better work when they believe decency is allowed," she said. "Make decency policy." He laughed. "You make it sound like a flowchart." "It is," she said, "with mess." The hum of Hale Industries headquarters on a Friday morning felt different, like the city itself had shifted its weight. Employees moved with purpose, but under their steps lingered a sense of anticipation. Something was about to break, whether good or bad, no one could tell. Ethan adjusted his tie in the mirrored surface of the elevator. The tie wasn't expensive. B had teased him once, calling it honest fabric. Honest or not, it felt like armor as the elevator doors slid open and revealed the boardroom's gleaming table, already occupied. Richard Hale sat at the head, jaw clenched, glasses folded neatly in front of him like a judge's gavel waiting to strike. B met Ethan's eyes as he entered, and though her expression was composed, he caught a flicker of encouragement in the lift of her brow. She had a way of transmitting whole conversations with a glance. "Mr. Reyes," Richard said, using the formal surname as if to test its weight. "You're here just in time. Our competitors have made their move." At the far end of the table sat Carlos from Vanguard Freight Systems, his suit sharp, his smile sharper. Two lawyers flanked him, their briefcases like coffins for someone else's mistakes. The moment Ethan saw them, he knew what this was. A strike disguised as a handshake. "Good morning," Carlos said smoothly. "We come in the spirit of collaboration. Vanguard believes Hale Industries would benefit from merging our logistics operations. Imagine the economies of scale, the efficiency gains." He slid a thick folder across the polished wood. "This is our proposal." Ethan opened it. Contracts written in dense legalese, spilled numbers that looked generous at first glance. Shared routes, reduced costs, streamlined processes. But beneath the surface, Ethan spotted the trapdoors, clauses that granted Vanguard disproportionate access to Hale's client data, and governance structures that would leave Hale vulnerable. He closed the folder carefully, like one would close a box of snakes. "What's your assessment?" Richard asked, his tone deceptively neutral. Ethan drew a slow breath. "On the surface it's compelling, but dig deeper, and it's a siphon disguised as a funnel. We'd bleed data, not share it. And their model is familiar." Carlos tilted his head. "Familiar?" Ethan met his eyes. "Identical to the framework I developed at Continental before your acquisition. Word for word. If Hale signs this, we're not partnering. We're being absorbed." Silence thickened. A director coughed, uncomfortable. Richard's gaze sharpened on Carlos. "Is that true?" Carlos only smiled, the kind of smile men use when they have nothing left but bravado. "Ideas travel, Mr. Hale. What matters is execution." Ethan leaned forward. His voice was calm, but each word cut with steel. "Then let's execute better, independently. If they're trying to buy us, it's because they know they're losing." For a long beat, no one moved. Then Bee spoke, her voice low but steady. "We decline, for now. But we'll keep the door open if terms ever shift in our favor. In the meantime, our pilot already proves we can win on our own." Richard studied both of them, weighing risk against instinct. Finally, he nodded. "Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Reyes." Carlos's lawyers began packing their papers, their movement stiffer than when they'd entered. Carlos himself stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate slowness. He leaned close to Ethan as he passed. "Careful, my friend. You've got a lot to lose. 3 children, an ill mother. Life has ways of complicating itself." The words weren't said loud enough for the board to hear, but Bee caught the look on Ethan's face. She rose immediately. "Gentlemen, the meeting is concluded." When the door shut behind them, the air in the boardroom seemed to exhale. Ethan's jaw was tight. "He's threatening me." "Not directly," Bee said, eyes narrowing. "But we both know what that was. Don't worry. You're not alone in this." Later, in his small but now permanent office, Ethan sat staring at the skyline. Dallas stretched wide, glass towers catching the sun like mirrors reflecting the future. His desk was cluttered with route maps, spreadsheets, and one crayon drawing taped to the monitor, Miguel's superhero version of his father, cape and all. The door opened softly. Bey entered carrying 2 coffees. She set one in front of him and didn't sit right away. He's rattled you. I've been broke, B. I've been jobless. But I've never had someone come after my family like that. It's different. She finally sat, folding her hands around her cup. Carlos plays dirty. But dirty doesn't mean strong. It means scared. And scared men overreach. You've got something he can't manufacture. Trust. My team trusts you. My father, despite himself, is starting to. And your dock workers talk about you like you're already one of them. That matters more than any clause in a contract. Her words loosened the knot in his chest, if only slightly. He nodded. Then we double down. Exactly. She smiled faintly. Pilot expands Monday. Irving first, then San Antonio. Let's make them choke on our dust. They worked late into the night, sketching integration models, aligning schedules, predicting choke points. When the office lights finally dimmed, Ethan realized they weren't just planning operations. They were planning survival, growth, maybe even legacy. The weekend brought no rest. At home, his children demanded attention. Miguel insisted on showing him a wobbly basketball shot in the driveway. Luisa proudly displayed her paper flower projects. Pedro, the eldest, asked thoughtful questions about supply chains, as if he'd been listening all along. Ethan laughed, answered, taught, and thought about B's comment, decency as policy. Maybe it started at home. On Sunday, B visited, dressed casually for the first time he'd ever seen her. Jeans, sneakers, a simple blouse. She helped Miguel adjust his stance on the driveway, clapped when he made a near-perfect shot, and later stood in the kitchen washing a pan while Ethan dried. It felt disarmingly ordinary, like they had rehearsed a future neither had dared imagine. That night, when his mother dozed in her chair, B asked gently, "Tell me about her." He knew she meant his late wife. He hesitated, then spoke, about cilantro arguments, about the scar on his hand from a radiator they'd fixed together, about love turned to instruction in the final days. B listened without interruption, her eyes holding his stories like vessels meant to keep them safe. When she left, she touched his arm and said only, "Thank you for trusting me with her." The following week began like a sprint. Hale's numbers improved rapidly. Drivers reported smoother runs, fewer delays. Priya's dock team hit 18 minutes and celebrated with a grocery store cake scrawled with the word choice. Ethan laughed with them, realizing that small victories taste sweeter when they're shared. Then, midweek, Vanguard sent their lawyers again. This time the accusations were thin, almost desperate, claims of intellectual property overlap, vague insinuations. Ethan countered calmly, demonstrating his unique modifications to the system, explaining design decisions with clarity that left no room for doubt. By the end of the meeting, even Richard was smiling grimly. "They're bleeding, or they wouldn't be clawing like this." That night, Ethan tucked Miguel into bed, the boy clutching his superhero drawing. "Dad," Miguel whispered, "are you really a hero?" Ethan kissed his forehead. "Only because I've got you three watching." Downstairs, B sat at the kitchen table with his mother, laughing at one of her sharp remarks about hospital food. The sight filled Ethan with a warmth that felt dangerous in its depth. The world outside was sharpening into a battlefield of contracts and logistics, but inside that small house he glimpsed something else: hope, stability, maybe even love. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't fall asleep bracing for disaster. Instead, he closed his eyes, knowing that, against all odds, he might actually be building a life worth keeping. Hale Industries woke that Friday with a hush, the kind that clings to a building before something irreversible breaks. Elevators chimed faster, ID badges beeped sharper, the lobby barista poured double shots without waiting to be asked. On the corridor screens, two numbers pulsed like beacons. 19 minutes on 2 freight lanes, and plunges 18% in market share. They weren't just metrics. They were doors. Ethan arrived early, yet the boardroom was already full. Richard Hale sat at the head, his glasses folded neatly, posture stiff as a verdict. Beside him, B had that stage presence of someone who knew half the room doubted her and chose not to flinch. Her hands clasped lightly on the table, her back straight, eyes alive. "Let's begin," Richard said. No preamble. The screen flickered alive, graphs dropping in costs, bars climbing in efficiency, a line of blue surging upward like a building raised from steel. "Our competitor has withdrawn their allegations," Richard announced, voice clipped but edged with satisfaction. "And they've come back with a different proposal, not merger, licensing." A ripple ran across the table. Directors leaned forward. Pens clicked, papers shifted. Ethan didn't move. He only felt a knot in his chest loosen, the kind of release that makes you realize you'd been bracing for months. B pressed the remote. The slide changed to a photo from the Irving dock. Priya grinning, a grocery store cake in front of her with the word "Choice" scrawled in bright blue frosting. A chuckle rolled through the room. "That's where change started," B said softly, tapping the screen. "Not here. Out there." The rest of the presentation was stripped to the bone. "License the platform at full value. Guard client data. Launch version 2 before Vanguard even understood version 1. Richard listened, asked 2 questions that each weighed a paragraph, and leaned back. Finally, he turned to Ethan. "The board met yesterday. We've created a new position, Director of Operations. We want you to take it." Time contracted, like the air had been vacuumed out of the room. Ethan saw hands, pens, a glass of water sweating on polished wood. But what he heard first was the inner click when a bolt slides into the right groove. At his side, B didn't quite smile. Her eyes softened instead, and it meant more. He swallowed, straightened. "I say yes." Applause, not staged, not polite, but the rough, genuine sound of people relieved something had gone right. Richard stood, extended his hand. The shake was firm, brief. "Welcome to the wait," he said, with no irony. The rest blurred. Handshakes, quick congratulations, Anna snapping a crooked photo on her tablet that somehow captured the moment perfectly. Priya screaming through the speakerphone, "About time," and then laughing until the call cut. The new office wasn't much bigger, but the window changed everything. Dallas sprawled wide, towers gleaming like steel teeth catching sunlight. From this height, the streets looked less chaotic, like arteries feeding something alive. B appeared at the doorway carrying 2 coffees. His was plain, hers dusted with cinnamon she always denied. She leaned against the frame, studied him for a moment before stepping inside. "So," she said, setting the cup down, "you've got a metal plate with your name on it now." "I'm not licking it," he deadpanned. She laughed, the kind of laugh that thinned the tension in his chest. Then her tone shifted. "There's more." She opened her folder and slid a sheet across. It wasn't a contract. It was a sketch. Arrows, boxes, dotted lines, international expansion, Europe division. Reporting line dotted to the global board. "My father spoke to the succession committee," she explained. "If numbers hold, it's likely I'll be named president next year." The joy he felt for her came first. The calculation followed. "Conflict," he said simply. "Conflict," she echoed. "Not melodrama, just fact. This plan solves it. You'd lead the European launch, reporting directly to the board, not to me." Ethan stared at the lines, the arrows, the dotted connection that looked deceptively simple. A move like this could untangle everything, or tangle it worse. "Europe?" he asked carefully. "Temporarily," B said. 1 year. Enough to establish operations, build a team. After that you could run it from here or anywhere." She leaned forward slightly. "It would also mean something else. No conflict of interest, no whispers, no one questioning what's professional and what isn't." Her eyes held his. Beneath the professional steel, there was something softer, riskier. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked past her, at the skyline lit by morning. Dallas was spread wide and complicated, a city that punished hesitation but sometimes rewarded courage. He thought of Miguel's crayon drawing taped to his monitor, Dad with a cape standing tall in front of a skyscraper. Director of Operations, he murmured, almost to himself. Now Europe. Now choice, B corrected gently. They stayed in the quiet for a beat too long, coffee cooling between them, city humming outside the glass. The restaurant's glass made the river look closer than it was, a sheet of dark silk barely ruffled by wind. From their table, the city stacked itself in reflections, lights in the water, lights in the window, lights caught in Bee's hair when she tilted her head to listen. Ethan had picked the place because his mother once called it where good decisions like to happen. He hoped the room still had that magic. He wore a suit that fit better than honesty, though not by much. Bee arrived in navy that turned the soft amber sconces into compliments. The host said her name with the careful respect people used for storms and saints. She sat. The waiter poured. Conversation started with work, because that was their shared first language. The 19 lanes, Priya's gleeful profanity on the call, a driver named Lyle who'd begun leaving 5 minutes earlier out of spite for fate. The licensing deal was now just signatures and commas. Lawyers still circled, but they no longer dictated weather. When the plates came, roasted fish, charred lemon, a small forest of herbs. Neither ate much. Bee traced a tiny circle on the rim of her glass, thinking. My father asked if I'm afraid, she said, of taking the big chair. Are you? Ethan asked. Of the chair? No. Of what the chair changes. A little. She glanced up. Power rearranges rooms. I don't want it to rearrange us. He let the words settle between them. He could picture it. Her name on the door, the way meetings would straighten when she entered, the way his own presence beside her might turn their private warmth into something to be picked at. He didn't want that either. Then we design around the room, he said. We've done harder. Her smile was quick. Grateful. I brought the map you saw, she added. Europe. It's real if you want it to be. He could feel the outline of the drawing in his mind. Arrows across an ocean, boxes labeled with cities he'd only seen as airplane codes, LHR, FRA, AMS. He imagined finding the rhythm of a foreign warehouse, learning the vowel shapes of a new dock cruise jokes, texting his kids goodnight at odd hours, the 3 dots bubble blinking from an ocean away. 1 year, he said, to hear how the time sounded in the air. 1 year, she repeated, and I'll come and go. We won't make the ocean our excuse. A beat. I know this asks a lot of the kids. They've done a lot since they learned the word, he said softly. But they like you. That helps. He watched her absorb that like sunlight. The waiter cleared plates that had mostly been rearranged. Dessert was a small, perfect thing that tasted like citrus and patience. After, when the room's hum had dropped to a murmur, Bee set down her fork and folded her hands, deliberate. Ethan, there's something I should say cleanly, before the org charts and flight plans. I love you. She didn't look away, didn't laugh it off. Just let the truth sit, bright and unadorned. He felt it in his chest like a door opening you didn't realize you'd braced against. So simple, how some sentences rewire a future. I love you too, he said. It came out steady. Let's build this, so it doesn't break the other things we care about. Deal, she said, and the word was their native tongue. They left hand in hand, the night warmer than the forecast. Outside, the valet lane glittered with cars pretending to be more than machines. They didn't rush to theirs. The river breathed. Somewhere across it a train stitched a silver sound through dark. He kissed her, and it wasn't cinematic so much as calibrated. The right pressure, the right time, the right promise. When they separated, she rested her forehead to his. Please tell your mother I brought the right wine this time, she whispered. She'll pretend you didn't, he said. Then save the bottle for when guests worthy of it visit. They laughed, parted, drove. Life refused to wait for anyone's poetry. Monday arrived with emails and freight and a minor printer mutiny in Irving. Ethan stood at Dock 7 while Priya narrated the jam like a sports announcer, and, together, they insulted the outage back to life with pre-printed labels and a backup spool stashed like contraband. 17, then 18. The board went up another tick. Someone taped a handwritten sign over the scoreboard that said, "No miracles, just sequencing." At home, the calendar became a crossword to solve daily. Lucia's follow-ups at St. Clara, Pedro's science fair heatsink, which Bay's engineer friend critiqued over video chat, gentle and exact. Luisa's paper flowers colonizing the kitchen, Miguel's driveway jump shot finally arcing clean through net. "Gravity is a suggestion," he informed his father, who clapped like a man cheated pleasantly by physics. Teresa learned to say middleware with the solemnity of a prayer. The house became what good houses are, loud with the right noises. The licensing deal inked on a Wednesday that smelled like rain. The press release went out in phrases that made pride sound like math. Richard called a floor meeting, something he rarely did. He stood on a low step near the lobby and spoke without the glass of a boardroom between him and the people who'd hauled the numbers into existence. "We did this," he said. "We, as in drivers and packers and planners, and a daughter who insists I'm wrong 3 times a week, and a man who missed an interview because he knew a stranger's flat tire was, for that moment, the more honest problem." He didn't point at Ethan, which made the recognition land cleaner. Applause ran up the atrium, warm and messy. B caught Ethan's eye from across the crowd. No performance, just a look that said, "See, choice becomes culture." That night, Lucia declared her appetite off probation, requested arroz con pollo, and delegated spice levels like a general. After dinner, she pulled Ethan onto the porch. The evening was light enough to show a sliver of violet wherever the sky shrugged off the day. "Say it out loud," she ordered. He feigned ignorance. "What?" "The thing that's obvious to everyone in this zip code." He laughed, then didn't. "I'm going to take Europe," he said. Saying it steadied it. 1 year. We'll plan it well. The kids will have a voice. B and I will be smarter than our fear." Lucia nodded, satisfied. "Love is logistics," she said, pleased with herself. "You two will be fine." When he told the kids, he didn't dress it in excitement they hadn't asked for. He drew the map on a whiteboard from the hall closet. Airplanes, dotted lines, a cartoon of Big Ben that looked like a confused toaster. He said, 1 year, and we'll vote on school options, and we'll test run summer first. Miguel wanted to know if European dinosaurs were different. Luisa asked if rain was scheduled or freestyle. Pedro, thoughtful, asked about time zones and feeling far. "We'll time zone the feelings too," Ethan said. No one gets left behind on the calendar. They made a list titled "What Makes Home Home" and taped it to the fridge. It was not philosophical. It included Taco Tuesdays, The Good Blanket, Dad's Bad Dancing, and The Sound the Dryer Makes When It's Lying. Be added in neat block letters, people, place. No one argued. The next morning he found a note under his office door in careful, unfamiliar cursive. "Mr. Reyes, thank you for making the docs pay us on what matters. My kids' asthma meds didn't wait for the old bonus." Lyle. He kept it in his wallet behind Miguel's drawing. A second talisman, proof that when you move a lever in the right place, the world budges where it counts. The last meeting before Europe planning turned formal had the feel of weather changing. Richard laid out timelines, legal laid out borders, finance laid out nerves. B watched the room and then, at the end, looked only at Ethan. "We'll build the bridge before we cross it," she said, "but we will cross it." He believed her, not because of the suit or the title or even the map. Because in the months since a nail in the road introduced them, she had made every hard thing specific and every specific thing humane. He had learned to meet the world that way too. 1 dock, 1 driver, 1 kid's bedtime, 1 choice at a time. On their last quiet evening before travel dates took over the whiteboard, they walked by the river where the restaurant glass had borrowed the water. The city hummed behind them, less a machine now than a neighbor. They talked about nothing and everything, the merits of umbrellas, the mystery of British breakfast, whether Priya could be convinced to teach a class called Leadership for People Who Hate Meetings. They stopped at the railing. The water took the moon and pretended it was its idea. "If someone asked you how we got here," B said, "what would you say?" He thought of answers with graphs and acronyms. He let them go. "We stopped for each other," he said, then kept going. She nodded, satisfied. "Make that the policy," she said. He took her hand. It fit like it had studied for the test. Sometimes a flat tire is just bad luck. Sometimes it's a hinge. The pilot became a platform. The platform became a deal. The deal became a promotion. The promotion became a way to be a better son and father, and love threaded itself through the practical like wire through a fence. The future didn't feel guaranteed. It felt earned. And you, where are you listening from? Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this road runs. If this story gave you something, a minute of calm, a reminder that small choices matter, share it with someone who might need it. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We've still got miles to go, and I'd be glad to have you riding shotgun.